I'm a professional baker, and even I don't like going through the trouble of making puff pastry at home. I'm gonna show you how to take the store-bought stuff and turn it into this incredible savory tart. Puff pastry comes frozen and you want to defrost it. Defrosting it on the counter for about 40 minutes is the best way to do it. So here I have a sheet that I've defrosted, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it down on a sheet pan lined with parchment paper and just gently unfold it. Now, if you defrosted it too much and it's too soft to handle, you can definitely just stick it back in the fridge to firm it back up. I'm just gonna lay it down and flatten it out. And if you feel like there's too much flour, you can just grab a pastry brush and just brush some of that off. I'm gonna use a small rolling pin and just roll it out so it's more of a rectangular shape. So now I'm gonna grab an offset spatula. You can also use like a dull knife, but I like something that's not super sharp so it doesn't cut through the actual pastry dough. What I wanna do is kind of create a border that'll puff up higher than our center. So I'm just gonna go about a ½ inch from the edge and go all the way around. Make sure that the seams meet. Now I'm gonna grab a fork, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna poke holes right in the center. Puff pastry is made by layering dough and butter over and over and over again, and that's what creates all those like fluffy, flaky, tender layers. So one thing that will happen as you bake it is steam will kind of get in between each layer and the whole thing will puff, hence its name. But in the center, we don't want it to puff too much because we're gonna put our toppings in. So once you've poked holes into the center of your puff pastry, we wanna make sure that the edges have a nice golden color to them. So I'm just gonna take an egg, and using the fork, I'm just gonna beat it. Now, if you don't have egg, you can also use milk to brush on the edges as well. So I'm gonna dip it in and just start brushing the sides. And we're gonna stick this in the oven for about 10 minutes until it kind of starts to puff up. Baking it for a little bit right now will allow the crust to rise. If you don't par bake, the bottom might get soggy and undercooked. The oven is set to 400 degrees, and it's really important to have high heat. Once it goes in the oven, it's gonna start to puff up. I just took this out of the oven, and look what that egg wash did. It's perfectly golden, and I could see that it's starting to get really flaky. So at this point, we're gonna start adding our toppings, and then we'll continue baking it. Today, I'm gonna use a mixture of mustard, cheese, and asparagus. I'm just gonna take a little offset, and I'm gonna start spreading it right in the center. Once you're done spreading the mustard, now we can move on to the cheese. So here I have some Fontina that has been grated. I'm just gonna sprinkle it onto the center. Once you've finished adding your cheese, we can go on to the vegetables. So here I have asparagus. I already trimmed the tips, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay them on the tart, but I'm gonna alternate the way that they're facing. When you're preparing your vegetables with this, say in this case, the asparagus, I'm gonna want ones that are thinner because we're only gonna bake this for about 20 minutes afterwards. So I finished placing my asparagus, and now I'm just gonna give it some herbs. So here I have some thyme. I'm just gonna take some of the leaves off, just sprinkle it on there. I wanna put some cracked black pepper on it, sprinkle a little bit more cheese, and now we're ready to bake this. So this is just gonna go back into the oven, bake up for another 20 minutes. All right, hot and fresh out of the oven. I smell the buttery pastry, as well as the spiciness from the mustard and the herbiness from the thyme. So let's go ahead and grab our tart, move it onto our cutting board, and I'm just gonna slide the paper right off. Now I'm gonna top it with some prosciutto. Go ahead and slightly twist it and place it right on your tart. Space it out so you can see some of that asparagus. Now let's drizzle it with some balsamic glaze. I feel like this gives a little bit of sweetness and acidity to the spicy mustard and the salty cheese, and it'll kind of balance out all the flavors. That looks super beautiful and delicious. So here I just have a long knife. I'm just gonna start in the center, just gonna go straight across, and then I'm gonna cut it maybe in 2 portions here. So one right here. See how impressive this looks? And it took no time at all. Do you hear how flaky that is? Because we par baked it, the bottom is not soggy or undercooked at all. Did you hear that crunch? It's so flaky. The flavors are so fresh. I can taste spring. Everything goes so well together. It's super delicious. It's so good, I can't stop eating it. If you try making it yourself, please leave in the comments below what you put on yours. Make sure you're following to see more recipes like this. Bye.
Listen, calm down.
There was champagne in here or just...